Hello, guys. Good morning and good afternoon. If you're joining us on the East Coast, welcome to another Costa Rican Vacations webinar. This month, we are discussing everything related to family travel here in Costa Rica. Thanks for joining us. Today, I'm going to be chatting with one of our senior travel consultants, Anastasia McCulloch. Great to have you back. How are you doing?
Hello, doing very well, thank you. How are things in the Central Valley?
Central Valley's good. It doesn't look quite as sunny as where you are up in Guanacaste.
Hotter than anything.
We've also got Maite again. Maite recently on one of our podcasts. Maite, how are you doing?
I'm good. How are you, Adam?
I'm good, thanks. You're joining us from Santa Ana here in the Central Valley, so I can see a
Yeah.
little bit more sun shining through where you are.
Más o menos. It's not that bright.
It's not that bright.
No.
And today, guys, Wendy Weber from the Southern Eastern area is going to be joining us as our moderator, helping us get all the great links to the websites and potential videos that we're going to discuss. Wendy, how's it going?
Everything good, thank you.
Awesome. So, guys, as ever, we've got a bunch of really exciting questions regarding family travel from the best spots to visit, some of the best hotels, Anastasia and Maite's best top tips when it comes to traveling with family. If you have a bunch of questions for us, please do get them into us live on the Q&A, which you can use here in the Zoom chat. And another TC, a travel consultant here at Costa Rica Vacations, Ashley Ballard, will actually be responding to you live. And then during our Q&A session, we will review some of the top questions and get straight back to you and go over some of those questions that might be helpful to ask live on camera. So if you have questions, please get them in and we will answer, as I say, immediately. I will give you guys Anastasia and Maite's direct information towards the end of the webinar, so you can check that out in the chat as well. Hello, Ashley. Thumbs up from Ashley. So guys, get the questions in. And without further ado, let's get this webinar kicked off by discussing one of the big questions, which is what makes Costa Rica such a great destination for family vacations? Anastasia, you're obviously now a mum recently of two kids. You've been living here for nigh on 15, 16 years. What makes Costa Rica so good for family getaways?
I was thinking about this, and there are so many things to rattle off about just, I would say to start with like the proximity to the United States, I feel like is huge. It's a pretty quick flight to get down here. A lot of places have nonstop flights. There's no time change, so that's all nice. Costa Rica is very diverse. So from little, very small kids, you can have a very engaging experience with them all the way up to something for seniors. I recently moved my parents down here too. So I've been doing a lot more travel with multiple generations. And I think just the kindness of the Costa Rican people and like how much they love kids and how kids are allowed to be kids down here and they're just engaging with them and they're so kind and proud of their nation. Like, I feel like it just feels good to be here among Ticos and Costa Ricans, whereas some other countries maybe aren't quite as quite as friendly to US travelers, or quite as understanding about little kids. So for all of those reasons, I think Costa Rica is a really solid spot.
That's a really good point geographically as well, especially if you're in the southern area, Texas, East Coast, like, 3, 4, 5 hours, a lot of direct flights. So that certainly makes it easier as well. With like when you actually get here, the geography in country, so much to do and see, very friendly people for sure. Even though the roads getting between locations can sometimes be 2 or 3 hours, but if you can make those tours a kind of a tour experience as well, it can be a lot of fun. Maite, what would you add to that?
I would say that it's just, I mean, it's a tiny country, yes, but there is so much to see. We have the rainforest, the cloud forest, the beaches, the animals, like for kids. I remember when I like first started going out and traveling with my family, just, the monkeys and the frogs and everything. It's amazing to see it up close, and it's all, as you say, like 3 hours away from each other. So yeah, it's 3 hours of, traveling on road. It can be a little bit tricky, but when you get to your destination, it's something, that never gets old. Even for us that live here in Costa Rica, it never gets old. And yeah, also about the safety, everybody's, as Anastasia said, super friendly, super kind. I always get it when I travel internationally and then I come back and everybody's like, welcome home, and everybody's like giving you a helping hand, and I'm like, my people.
I think I think you can't really underestimate as well. Like Costa Rica has always been such a friendly country, but also
Yep.
for all of us that live here, and of course, Wendy's a local, it's such a family oriented culture as well. So if you're coming down with, young kids, 8, 9, 10, middle-aged, young teenagers, I think you're integrating really easily with the culture as well. Yeah, I think that goes a long way, and it should never kind of be underestimated, the value of that warmth, as well as all the great things to do, which we're going to get in touch with. So yeah, I totally agree. Proximity, obviously, for North America, if you're living from Europe, if you can get a direct flight over, I think it's beneficial
Yeah.
as well. And even Canada, it's a little bit further afield, obviously, if you're coming down from further up in North America. Yeah, really good points. Let's get into some of the details. Don't forget to get your questions in. Thank you, Randy. We'll get back to you regarding turtles hatching. All questions are welcome, guys. It's also worth pointing out, not just questions related to family travel. The questions and answer session at the end is perhaps you're coming to Costa Rica in a couple of weeks. You want to know what to pack, how busy it's going to be in Christmas, or what the weather's like randomly in April. So any questions are valid. Get them in. But in terms of family attractions, I guess, of course, it depends. We're going to talk about destinations in a little bit. But Maite, what would you say are some of the top tours and attractions that families are looking for when coming down and that you'd recommend?
So obviously it's gonna depend a little bit about on the ages of the kids. So the little kids that are not walking on their own, that's something different. But kids that are around 5, they can start doing adventure activities if they're into it. So if they're good with heights, they can already start doing zip lining and the hanging bridges, which is amazing. You're in the middle of the jungle. There's you're just surrounded by jungle, so there's nothing else really. So I think that one's a big one for sure. And then just national, a big interest for families. What else can I say? Anna, do you want to jump in as well?
Absolutely, sure. So yeah, talking about that 5 is kind of like that magical age where they can and do everything that they want. You have like the ATV tours, but you also have UTVs, so the parents can be driving and take the kids out to do some really exciting adventures, waterfall rappelling. If you do private tours also, sometimes they will allow your kids to do things like maybe a rafting tour, or a horseback riding activity that maybe on a public tour wouldn't be as appropriate, but you could still do it with younger kids going the private route. National parks, night hikes, cultural experiences like chocolate tour. What kid doesn't love a chocolate tour? You can absolutely do things like cooking classes, local farm experiences. I think it's also nice because a lot of these activities will kind of bring their classroom to life. So I always like to think of like the educational aspect of some of these tours as well. So things like marine biology, volcanology, climate, sustainability, all of these things can be really incorporated into an itinerary based on your kids' interests. So yeah, every family is going to want to do different things. Some kids are just wild, like my son, and it's just does all the things. But I have other families who like their kids want to do wildlife photography tours, and it's like, wow, that's very sophisticated for an 8-year-old, but there are options available. So yeah, I think there's a very wide variety, depending on the interests of the children.
I think it's a really good point, and you mentioned there as well the cultural aspect and the educational aspect, especially in the last 5, maybe 8 years, where a lot more little mum and pup shops have opened up. More educational tours can be massively eye-opening for some of these kids that may be coming down. Not only are you coming to a rainforest or a cloud forest or a marine park, the national parks you mentioned are quite accessible. Some of the smaller ones are also really good for smaller hikes or short walks with your kids. And you mentioned night hikes there. It just makes me think that a lot of the time, night hikes actually happen at the hotel you're staying at. So they're super accessible in terms of maybe going just before dinner. The sun goes down generally 5:30, 6 year round here. So you can have a gentle walk around the property for half an hour for even smaller kids, get that experience, not necessarily be so fearful of the creepy crawlies, but then hear all those tropical sounds. And like you say, wildlife photography at 8, right? That's incredible. But, if you have, whether it's your parents' smartphone or you've got a little, snap and shoot, and you're kind of seeing all these new things for the first time, that educational side is really, really exciting. And having these, as you said, chocolate tours, and even going to farm tours now, more cultural tours where you go off, you make your lunch. I remember doing a video a few years ago and the whole family were involved in making a local lunch, a casado, and they were just getting all the little elements immediately from the garden, bringing them in. I think that educational side is massive, and they seem to be popping up all over the country as well.
Simple life.
Yeah, yeah. And of course, adventure tours. I mean, if say I had a family, Anna, my kids were maybe 5, 6, 9, 10, 3 or 4 year gap, what kind of soft adventure tours would you recommend?
So again, right off the bat, like they can all zip line and they can all do the waterfall rappelling. That is the best tour. I've done so many tours in the country, that waterfall rappelling, because you don't have to be like super athletic to do it. You just have to be a little brave, you know, and the guides are the ones working the lines. It feels very adventurous, and the photos that come out of it are just awesome. There are other waterfall tours that can take you into some different locations that are a little bit more like you feel very off the beaten path, and you can like jump off the waterfalls or slide down the waterfalls. Those are super fun. Boat tours, snorkeling. I think horseback riding is another one that my family has really enjoyed. And it's something that you don't do every day, you know, like trying to come up with things that you might not do in other countries. If these are, you know, typically people who come here also take other vacations throughout their time and go and see more cultural things. But here the adventure is really something else.
Yeah. It's a really good point. Amishi here is asking a question. Although we're going to look at the questions afterwards, it's kind of relevant to what we're talking about right now is, you know, how scary is zip lining? And I think you make a really good point that there's like very basic weight restrictions. And I remember, again, doing a zip line a couple of years ago, and there was families and the kids were 4 and 5 jumping between, and they were the first people on the zip wires. The adults were more, you know, cautious before. And I find that Costa Rica, when you're talking about adventure travel, you say you've got whitewater raft rapids, but there's always going to be a softer version, maybe a river float. The same thing with shorter cables. There's going to be certain zip lining that you can do that maybe is better instead of doing the really big ones.
Lines out there. Some of them are much more family friendly, or, you know, even that skittish adult, like you were talking about, they're just much better for them. But then there's the, you know, hold on to your hat, like serious zip line for the teenagers. We've got those too.
Yeah.
But you can also, your kid can also go with a guide.
Yes.
Yeah. That's something that you can keep in mind. Nobody is going to push your child.
Yeah.
So like if they don't have to go.
And it's also incredibly safe. There's all these different protocols.
Yeah, it is. I mean, you are hooked to that thing like 4 times over.
Yes.
And we also work with 2 of the companies that normally ziplining, you have to kind of brake with your hand. 2 of the companies that we work with that have the best zipline, in my opinion, they have automatic brakes. So the kids don't have to brake with their hand, which I think is a big plus.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
For sure.
I totally agree. And having the tour guides involved, if you do want to do something like ziplining, you know, with your family, and it's the same thing whether you're floating down a river or maybe a softer river float or kayaking experience. There's always different levels to do many of these adventure activities. I always find, for sure. You guys are asking some great questions. Definitely keeping Ashley busy. I will address one of them. Susie Burr is asking, what tours activities include transportation for very active seniors? I guess that's something that we can go into detail, but it's probably worth just mentioning that a lot of the tours, if they're not operated at the hotel, will probably include transportation nearly always. Would that be fair?
At least with us, right? Like if you book,
that's
not
true.
Necessarily all tours, but if you're booking a package with Costa Rican Vacations, they pretty much all include the transportation.
Yeah. Yeah, we always make sure everything is fully encompassed in your experience. You're never going to be waiting around or have to solve any issue. That's a very good point, Anna. Keep getting your questions in, guys. It's great to see them flying in. So we've obviously discussed a lot of different attractions, national parks. Anna, where is a great destination? Obviously, we've got all these killer destinations around Costa Rica. What are your kind of favorites? Say you were coming for a week and you wanted to visit 2. Where is your family going initially?
So if it's my first trip, never been here before, right? I think that weather permitting, I would say the Arenal volcano region and Manuel Antonio. Like for me, those are just the best. Arenal volcano, like it's so impressive. The volcano is just huge. I mean, it's just massive. And if your kids haven't seen one before, it's really very cool. And you've got like waterfalls and wildlife and lots of restaurant options, lots of hotel options. And it's nice because tours from that area are all really close by. So you don't have like that long hour drive to get to an activity. It's like 15 minutes from your hotel, you know. And then when you finish up, you go back to the hotel. Maybe you've got hot springs or you got a great pool, nice views, and you can just relax for the afternoon. Manuel Antonio for me is like the poster child of Costa Rica. Like when people think about Costa Rica, I feel like what they have in their mind is Manuel Antonio. Like there are monkeys all over the place. You know, you go to the grocery store and there are monkeys like sitting outside waiting for them to take the trash out. Or you've got sloths and scarlet macaws and dolphins. Just like it's very wild. And they aren't like Asian monkeys that like come up and steal your cell phone, you know, like they're a little bit more skittish than they are in other parts of the world. So I feel like Manuel Antonio is just beautiful. And also for me, like thinking about the safety of my kids and having medical centers and accessibility to a pharmacy or a doctor or whatever, if I need them, I know that those are two areas that are like pretty well developed. It's a pretty quick trip back to San Jose if you needed to. Like you just have that accessibility that you hope you don't need, but to know that you have it there is helpful.
Yeah, I mean both those destinations, as well as being beautiful places, relatively close to San Jose. So if you're flying internationally, just under 3 hours to get to the volcano, and then the trip back to the beach is a similar 3 hours. So in terms of traveling on the ground, as well as having a really good number of tours that are kind of great for family, everything that we discussed prior in both of those areas, a nice balance. Maite said,
there are flights too. It's worth noting that if you have kids who just won't do the car thing, those are also two areas that have domestic flights. And it's like 25 minutes. I mean, instead of a 3-hour car ride, it's a beautiful flight that you can hop around the country very easily. Just a little extra note there.
Yeah. No, that's a great experience. And if your kids and you haven't been on a small flight before, that's also massively exciting, doing a little domestic flight. Maite, obviously Arenal volcanoes we discussed on last month's tour, you know, talking about all things adventure tour related. We know that's the adventure capital. A lot of people love to go to the volcano area with the hot springs and all the tours. If you weren't going to Manuel Antonio, where might you send them as another good second location?
So I would say Guanacaste. Guanacaste in my eyes, it just is you know, more about the beach, more about relaxing, more about enjoying the ocean, the pools, you know, a little bit of more, yeah, just, you know, downtime, that sort of thing. It's still really beautiful. Like during December, January, February, you get those sunsets that are, you know, to die for. But it is more of that type of thing. There's also a lot of little beach towns with a lot of shops, a lot of restaurants. So it's also nice that you can, you know, go out walking from your hotel and have, you know, a nice meal, head to the beach with, I don't know, a little drink for sunset. So it's more of that style of travel. It's less adventurous and less about the wildlife than Manuel Antonio for sure, but it's still a really nice option.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Guanacaste's got a lot of different kind of styles of hotels, a lot of larger resorts, all-inclusive options as well, but also a nice variation of beaches. So you want a couple of beaches that are softer for swimming. Again, great for families. Anastasia, you're close to one of them.
Very good point. Yeah, yeah, living in Guanacaste, like I feel much more comfortable with my kids being in the beach here than maybe in some of the southern beaches. Like there's some nice ones still around Manuel Antonio, but the farther south you go, I feel like riptides are, you know, they happen. It does happen. And so you do have to be more careful with your kiddos down there.
Yeah, it's a really good point. It's actually one of my next questions because a lot of people want to come down here, obviously, Costa Rica, come for the beaches. What are the best family-friendly beaches? So say someone wanted to come maybe visit 2 beaches, or do they just wanted to come for a second trip? They're on the beach for a week. Let's have a look at this, see if we can get the top 3 or 4 beaches. Maite, where would you know, if I asked you, what's your favorite family-friendly beach? What would your initial reaction be?
I love Playa Conchal. So it's this white sanded beach. It's called Conchal because in Spanish, conchas are little shells. So it's made up of little shells. It's white sand. It's usually quite like blue waters, because in Costa Rica that's not very usual because of our tides and currents and all of that. But Conchal almost always is a more light colored water. And it's this huge beach. You can just walk from side to side. There's no currents usually. You can always see like kids splashing away in the water. It's a beautiful beach and it's safe for kids.
Yeah, awesome. I like Conchal. Really nice snorkeling as well on both ends.
Awesome.
Anastasia?
Well, I'll just start with little kids. Playa Panama, that is up here in Guanacaste. There is actually a Marriott property located there, El Mangrove. It's like a lake. It's like a bay. And so that's really nice. Andas Papagayo has their little beach. I can't think of the name of the beach, but anyways, it's on the Papagayo Peninsula and Bay Area. It is a perfect beach for little kids. Like, it's super calm. There are trees for shade. They even have like a little swing over there. Like, it's really, really nice for having little babies out. But as they get older, like, I think, my mind gears more towards like playing in the waves and romping around a little bit. And then it's more of like the Tamarindo or even Playa Grande. I was there recently. I was really impressed with that beach for playing in the waves and boogie boarding and kinds of stuff, surf lessons. And beaches farther south are also quite nice. Like if you go down into the Dominical and Ubita area, more for walking the beach. Who don't necessarily want to swim, but they want a really scenic experience. That area is just stunning.
Yeah. Yeah, really, really good point. In Guanacaste, you have a lot more options in terms of calmer waters inside the coves. Like you said, on Andas, again, easier if you're actually staying at the hotel as well.
Right.
Manuel Antonio is a lovely beach, but it can be a bit more choppy. There are soft waves for surfing at one side, so maybe slightly older kids. I think it's a say again.
Pisan's beach that's
Yes.
down by like Parador and
Yeah.
Shanna. Like that's a nice, calm little cove.
Yeah.
That's a great cove for kids.
That's a really good point. And so there are, depending on what your needs are, where you'd like to stay, do ask your own travel consultant directly if you are planning a vacation with us. And the beach is a really important asset, but also, I guess, accessibility, getting to the beach, whether it's, walking down from the hotel, or you don't, if you're in a rental car, you don't want to drive even a couple of minutes because then you've got the issue of parking, right? So yeah, that's there's some really, really good ones. And of course, we didn't discuss the Caribbean side, but if you are going off the beaten path and you're going down to Puerto Viejo, on Costa Rica's southern eastern side, on the other coast, on the Caribbean side, really soft water, very, very calm around Punta Uva, Manzanillo, very, very beautiful.
Yeah.
Great for snorkeling, the little tide pools all around the coast. That's beautiful for kids.
Yeah.
And there's a lot more tropical fish that are colorful compared to the rest of the country, I would say. You can just put your little goggles on and, go in the pool and see everything. I remember doing that a lot when I was like a small kid. I would play mermaids there.
Last time I was there, I was doing the same thing. You don't have to go up here in Costa Rica. It's very true. Fantastic. Well, we're nearly halfway through with some of our questions, guys. The questions are flying in, keeping Ashley busy. We're looking forward to going over some of those questions shortly. Anastasia, you touched on the Andas. It's a lovely big resort in Papagayo with good beach access. Let's discuss a couple of family-friendly hotels because there's a ton of options. There's also all-inclusive options. We also love to kind of push smaller boutique hotel options, so you get great experience, but also access to tours and the beach. Anastasia, as well as Andas, what are some of your top 3 hotels when you think immediately family-friendly?
I talked with my kids about this recently.
Okay, you have direct experience.
So he helped me with this list. Peace Lodge. Like,
Good one.
Love Peace Lodge. Oh my gosh, I think that's his favorite place ever. Nyara Tented Camp. Super cool, like glamping experience, but amazing for parents as well. So it's not just the kids. Springs Resort comes to mind as a really fun, like, option for multiple age groups as well. I also like, not just for the fun part, but also like thinking of some locations that have laundry for me, that's a big deal. Like, I really like to have, like, not go home to a gigantic thing of laundry. So even some of the rentals, like the Palms on Flamingo Beach, fantastic for families. And you've got your own washer and dryer, which I really appreciate. Some of the places in Las Catalinas have their own washer and dryer in the units. And then, yeah, I mean, there are others. I'd say the other top one for me is Lapa Rios.
Oh,
Like,
interesting.
I think that Lapa Rios is so engaging with kids, and it gives such a real, raw, like non-filtered experience in Costa Rica, but still in perfect, like, safety, harmony with nature, still feels luxurious for the parents. I think I've had so many families write back and just say, my kids will not stop talking about this place.
That's really interesting. Yeah, no, I'm gonna, for you guys, I'm gonna give you a link here, some of our best family-friendly resorts on our website. So that's in the chat. You mentioned the Peace Lodge. So just to give people some context, the Peace Lodge is a really nice boutique property located about an hour away from San Jose in the Central Valley, offering really great access to a biological garden and a sanctuary for animals, as well as a lovely walk that you're going to see about 4 or 5 different waterfalls. So it's really nice if you're in Central Valley. And then mixing that with Nayara, which is a really kind of more safari experience, top, high end around the Arenal volcano. You also mentioned the Springs Resort, which again is a beautiful, kind of like the Disneyland in Costa Rica. You don't necessarily need to leave the property. Great volcano views, hot springs, loads of activities on site. We will get you guys a couple of videos of these properties if you're interested. And the reason I was interested to hear you say Lapa Rios is if you are going to the rainforest and you are flying to the deep south, you should probably fly because it's a very long drive. It really is off the beaten path, but it's a very luxury eco lodge experience inside the forest. Yeah, and you are truly immersed in nature. So you come back to those educational things.
Maybe 8 and older for Lapa Rios to like
Yeah.
really experience it and enjoy it.
I think that's a good point because it is more of an educational experience, and then maybe if your kid's a little bit younger, trying to manage the domestic flights and again the cabañas, a king bed or 2 queens, it's a little bit more integrated into nature. But yeah, really, really, really good resorts. Maite, what about you? If you're thinking on the beaches on the Manuel Antonio side, Guanacaste, what are some of your favorites, perhaps resorts?
So in Manuel Antonio, I really like Los Altos for families, just because the accommodation, it's like a big apartment with different rooms. So you will have like a shared kitchen, a shared terrace, a shared living room, but you each have your own bedroom. So that's a really good arrangement for families. Then Costa Verde is a more like rustic property, but I love it. I love it because, I mean, it's right next to the national park and you're going to constantly be seeing animals all over. So you're going to be in your terrace, you're going to see the monkeys, the sloths, everything. And it's also a huge property. So they have a bunch of restaurants, they have 2 pools, they even have like hanging bridges within the property. So it's just a great place to go. It's also not too far from the beach. So I love that area and those specific hotels for families. Of course, there's other options, but those are 2 of my favorite, I would say.
Costa Verde is a good one. Yeah, like
I
you
love
say,
it.
the access to the bottom of the town of Manuel Antonio, again, being immersed in nature with a very rustic vibe. So you really feel like you're involved. Plus, if I was a small kid or my little girl, she would love the aeroplanes sticking out,
Yes.
those fuselage rooms. That's pretty exciting, right? Yeah, fantastic. Good shout there. Okay, well, let's wrap up. So on to a question that was quite an interesting one that I saw that a couple of people have asked, and it's something that we sometimes discuss. Maite, how can families explore Costa Rica's national parks but more importantly, the wildlife safely? So sometimes I think people have this concept that I'm going to the rainforest, there's going to be snakes everywhere, big tarantula spiders. Is that really the case?
I mean, sometimes, but not usually. So what I would say is the best way to explore the national parks and the jungle and everything is to get a guide. A guide will help you explore everything safely, but it's also a way to see more wildlife because I went to Manuel Antonio once with no guide. I didn't see anything. I went with a guide and there was something every 5 meters. So it's just a different experience completely. And, it's someone that knows how to behave around animals. If there is a snake, how can you look at it safely? How can you, be okay with a snake on the trail or whatever? And if you do choose to explore national parks on your own, just stick to the trails. Don't go off-roading anywhere. Make sure to have sunscreen, bug repellent. I think those are big ones for national parks. But in general, I would say my biggest tip is just go with a guide because it's going to be a much better experience.
Yeah.
Oh, and sorry, I'm going to jump in again. As Anastasia said before, if you go with a private tour with kids, it might be a little bit nicer because you can go at your own rhythm, and that just makes it a little bit better.
Yeah. And it's a really good point. And I think if you do go by yourself without a guide, private or otherwise, you will find that many of these trails are really well marked. And because a lot of national parks have so much movement with people, you'll find that some of these wildlife tends to stay away from the trails. So it is quite, I would say, for the general popular areas, it's quite rare to see a snake, especially at the times of the day that you're probably enjoying the tour. So, of course, you'll see a snake at some point. Someone somewhere may see one. But in terms of those creepy crawlies, it's not like, unless you're maybe in Lapa Rios and you're doing a really deep, rainforest hike, which is unlikely with smaller kids anyway, the wildlife is never really that much of an issue. I guess you should, if you're in Manuel Antonio, you've got to be careful of angry monkeys or monkeys trying to steal your chips out of your bag, that kind of stuff, right? But it's not something that kind of is a common issue here, I would say. Would you say that's fair, Anna?
I think that's fair to say with the wildlife aspect of it, but I would totally double down on having a guide and having a certified guide. Not only are you dealing with wildlife, but you are dealing with raw, unfiltered nature. Like, I had an experience where I went to a very well-known waterfall, and in a torrential downpour, this waterfall went from being a really beautiful experience to a really scary, like, we can't get back to where we need to go,
right,
kind of thing. And we needed a guide to help us navigate how to get out of the national park. And I wasn't with my kids at the time, but I was with other people who had their young children with them. And I was really grateful that I didn't have my kids with me at that moment. But we had guides, we had people who were prepared. They knew an exit strategy. I mean, they made us feel very safe. They were, radio in contact with like Red Cross and things, like, just in case we needed it.
That's good.
We didn't, thank goodness. But it was like, wow, this is really why you do these things with a guide, because prior to that, I was like, let's just go, let's just throw them in the van and take off. But it's definitely much better to do with a guide, because they also read cues, like, they know about the weather. They know that, hey, if water changes color, you probably need to start heading out, like things like that you're just so engrossed in the experience. And if you don't know to keep your wits about you, you might just get, lost in the moment. So I think guides are critical. Also proper footwear. Like, if you're going to be going and you're going to be walking through some slippery rocks, like, get your kids in some water shoes. If you're going to be going through difficult terrain, put them in some hiking boots, like, have your water, have a pack, bring Band-Aids, bring, little things that maybe a little snack, because nothing fixes a bonk like a snack. I think just being prepared, it can save the day, in case something does come up. But overall, it's extremely safe to be out exploring the country. But I go with guides more than I. Now that
that's a really good point. I think it's worth pointing out that was an exceptional experience. Like, it's not the common thing.
No.
Especially if you're in the rainy season, it does rain and you are somewhere around water. Rivers can also, pick up waterfalls. But really good point. And obviously we, at least at Costa Rican Vacations, take extra care in working with some of the best tour operators that do make safety paramount all the time. And the guides are exceptional at what they do. So that was great that you got out safely and you were in touch with all the right people. You've actually started to ask my next question, which was for you, Anastasia, specifically. When it comes to safety tips, what should parents consider specifically when traveling with kids in Costa Rica? Is there anything that you would recommend on top of everything that you just mentioned? Maite mentioned the standard sunscreen, bug repellent, that kind of thing.
One of my
Yeah.
Top, cannot fail recommendations. Put them in a sun shirt that is a bright neon yellow or orange if you're out in the ocean or if they're at the pool or whatever. Like my son is, like I said, just wild. He has no fear. He's out there. He's 5 years old. He's romping in the waves and everything. And I can see that yellow shirt.
Yeah.
Even if he's under the water, I can easily identify where he is. For me, that was like such a game changer when another mom told me that, why don't you put him in a yellow shirt? And it was like, that's a great idea.
Yeah.
You're right. And so now we have like 6 of this yellow shirt, the same yellow shirt. So that's one of them. I would say if you have young kids, like bringing little necessary medications or anything, like if they, Benadryl or something like that, just in case they were to get a little bite that maybe made them uncomfortable. Also like a pack of sorts, a pack that you can carry your kids if you need to on a tour, just for their safety, for it to be more enjoyable for everybody, or bringing a stroller in case you need a stroller, those kinds of things. But also talking about safety, like this also makes me think of the older generations who come too. So not just about kids, but also having things like, being really sure that those shoes are not going to slip. If you're traveling with your the grandparents of the family, having things for them to maybe sit on or rest on along the way if they need to. Sun protection, sun gear is just critical for everybody. The sun is so strong here.
Yeah.
And also if you're working with a travel agent, like being very open about if anybody has any medical conditions, if anybody has any major allergies, if anybody has back surgery, like you should tell people so that we can advise you properly.
Yeah.
So that everybody has a safe and enjoyable stay.
Excellent. Yeah, no, really, really good points there. I kind of, you touched on the fact, and I had a question that I wanted to ask. I'll throw it over to you, Maite. Costa Rica, when thinking about families, it can also be a multi-generational trip, right? So families doesn't have to just mean kids. If you travel in a group, or maybe you've got some seniors, your grandparents are coming down, would you say that Costa Rica is a good destination at the same time, Maite, to involve everyone?
Yes, it's the best place. I think it's a really great place to bring everyone because there's things you can all do together. I don't know if one day the grandpas want to stay back and chill at the hot springs, they can do that. The kids can go to the zip lining, and there's always something to do for everyone. You can split up. As a travel agent, it's easy to have one day where the kids will be zip lining, the adults will be going to the hot springs, or they're gonna go to a sloth sanctuary or something like that. But you can definitely split it up. It's a great place for multi-generational trips. I had a really fun group. I still remember them. It was a big family, and they all wanted to go whitewater rafting. They actually all did. They were like, the grandparents were 80. There were kids that were like 8, and they went whitewater rafting. They all had the time of their lives. Something that Anastasia touched on is that being open and honest about the condition everyone's in. It's important for us to take into account not only for activities, but for hotels. There's some hotels that have a lot of stairs. There's hotels that are not so good for people that have bad knees. So just knowing those things will help us plan accordingly. And if, there's an 80-year-old that's in perfect condition, they can go whitewater rafting. If it's an 80-year-old that's not doing so well, then maybe you stick to the hot springs. So there's definitely something to do for everyone, but it's a great place to come with the whole family.
Awesome. No, I couldn't agree with you more. And Anastasia, obviously your parents are now living down here, your kids' grandparents. How are they liking it?
They love it. They're very happy. They're like, why didn't we do this earlier? Even though I've been trying to talk them into it for 10 years or whatever now. But no, they're very happy. They've figured out kind of how to maneuver around the country, and sorry, got birds here. But they always say, like, people are just so nice.
Yeah.
That's what they love. People are just so nice. Like, oh, I went to the store and they were just so helpful and negotiating language with me and, trying to figure out what I needed. And my mother has said that since I came down here, 15, 16 years ago, that she felt safe about me coming here as a very young 20-year-old single chick, coming down by myself. that she felt that it was the right place because of the people. So my parents are super happy here, and we've had, it's been a learning curve also for me, because like as a travel planner before I had kids, I had a certain style of how I planned everybody's vacation and what I took into account when I was planning a trip. And then having young kids, that was eye-opening about how to make it more enjoyable for parents of young children. Now I've got, they're getting a little older, and now having my parents here, it's like bringing it full scope of like knowing
yeah,
what's
for
going
sure.
to create a nice experience for every age. So yeah, but very, very happy that they're here.
Wonderful. Good stuff. No, I totally agree. Well, guys, we've got a couple more questions before we wrap up and get to the Q&As. There's plenty of questions flying in, so we'll try and get to some of those shortly. But the penultimate question, Maite, is actually regarding food and dietary options. Obviously, if you're coming with a family, kids can have all sorts of dietary options, as well as travelers and senior travelers. How is that usually addressed? How has that changed in the last decade or so, when it comes to the
Yeah.
menu and food here in Costa Rica?
So we have, like Costa Ricans, I feel like we have a very basic diet. It's going to be mostly like rice and beans, the protein that can be either animal protein or it can also be vegetarian or vegan. I think it's easily adaptable to types of diets. But then something that has changed a lot is that in a lot of just like any restaurant really, there's like, kid friendly meals, or, if there's someone that's very picky and they just want, chicken, they'll do that for you. They'll go above and beyond, and they'll make anything work for the kid or the person that has dietary restrictions. But overall, I've come to find that families that say that they have kids that are picky eaters, they do okay here, because it's not crazy cuisine. It's gonna be, I mean, platanitos, like plantains. How good is that? Like everybody loves that with a little bit of cheese. Everybody loves it. And then rice and beans, it's not something very strange. It's not something that has crazy taste. It's very good, but it's just basic. And then as far as other dietary restrictions, I feel like hotels, they can cater to anything. And then in restaurants across the country, since we're like, I mean, tourism is our biggest industry, they've really doubled down on that, and they can make anything work. So I haven't had any issues with that ever, like vegan, vegetarian, picky eaters, never had complaints about food, to be honest.
Good. Yeah, no, I agree. And I see this a lot in the meals, in the menus, I should say, on the hotels as well. Is that a similar experience, Anna, traveling around now with younger kids?
Yes. Yeah. And in the last 10 years, Costa Rica has come a really long way in like figuring out this whole, oh, I have dietary restrictions kind of thing. Cause at first it was like, oh, I'm gluten-free, have rice, it was like, no, that's not what that means.
Yeah.
So they've definitely come a long way. Everybody kind of understands now. And food here is just like healthy, like just by default, food is pretty healthy here. So I find that it's easy for parents to find things that their kids can eat and they feel good about them eating. And like what Maite was saying is like, they're so accommodating. So every so often I'll be somewhere and I'll be looking at the menu and I'm like, he's not going to want any of this stuff. So I'll just ask like, hey, can you just grill up some fish and give me some papas fritas, like just some French fries. And they're happy to do it. Or like, can you just make me a little chicken soup back there? And they're like, sure. Like if they have the stuff, they're so understanding about kids.
Yeah.
Like going back to what we were saying, they're just so happy to help. And like, I remember a time being at a Nayara property. My husband and I were there with our young kid and we're like, can you just make like a little puree? And they're like, sure, we'll make they made the puree for him. And then they come out and they're like, here, I'll hold him while you guys dine. And like it's just crazy how family friendly it is.
Yeah.
And how they want the kids to get the nutrition that they need. And like, it's kind of a love language for Costa Rica, like to feed the kids. It's really like eat more, and they'll take it.
I love it.
Yes, Anastasia, food is a love language in Costa Rica. You'll always feel taken care of.
It's really true. And it goes back to the service as well, that warmth and their family culture. And they would be the same, right, with their own kids. Plus you want that experience. I know it's lovely to hear. Really, really, really cool. And I agree. I've only ever really seen the same thing. Very accommodating. Menus have changed a lot over the last few years. Okay, well, to wrap it up, it's kind of the big one. Maite, I'll throw it over to you first. What are your top tips for planning a vacation for unforgettable family vacation? Very, very open, but when you,
Very open.
yeah,
Yeah. So, I mean, I think it's good to sit down with the family, see what you want to get out of the trip. See, the bucket list activities, make sure you plan good activity days, but also some downtime days, especially if it's a big family with, little kids, big, older grandparents. That way you get a good balance of what just a balance. That way you don't need a vacation from the vacation. And then, I mean, this isn't supposed to be salesy or anything, but getting in touch with a travel consultant that can really, suggest things that are going to be good for everyone, suggest activities that are going to be engaging for little kids, good for people that have, mobility restrictions or anything. Getting someone that knows, the activities, the hotels, how many stairs does it have?
yeah,
Someone that really knows what they're talking about is going to be very helpful. And then back to getting guides for the national parks or exploring the jungle, that's going to be very helpful. So yeah, I think it all condensates down to getting good guidance on planning the trip.
very, very good tip. I agree. Anastasia?
Yeah, I would just reiterate everything that Maite just said. I think that doing your research or getting in touch with someone who knows is absolutely critical. Having a little idea, having a little discussion with the family in advance, I think that's a great point, so that you know what everybody wants to do or doesn't want to do. And just being open, like when you talk to a travel consultant or a person who's helping you plan, like have them get to know you a little bit, have them get to know your kids a little bit. Don't be shy with details. Like we
Yeah.
want to show you the best time ever. And the more that we know about you, the easier it is for us to give you that guidance. Because vacation days are precious. Memories with your kids are precious. Like you only have so long, and then it's that senior trip.
Yeah.
So yeah, like I would just say, make sure that your time is worthwhile here and don't leave things up to chance and guessing. And my cousin Brittany said she had a great time at the Rio. Like,
That's why
hear
you
that
speak
kind
to the
of stuff.
experts.
I think your time is very valuable. So
Yeah,
yeah.
really, really good points, guys. And I agree. It's not just about, I mean, no, it is exactly like you say about planning with your family, but ask your travel consultants as well. Speak to you guys. What do you want to get out of it? What are your hopes, aspirations? Like you say, vacation time is precious. Come down, you're in Costa Rica. It should be a lot of fun. Your kids are going to have an absolute blast, but also make sure to do the stuff that works for you. I think they're really, really valuable points. Guys, I hope some of these questions have been helpful. They're the most potent 10 questions that we get asked a lot when it comes to family travel. I'm going to post Anastasia's and Maite's contact information in the chat. I'm also going to put up Ashley's email as well. Oh, there you go. I've added it twice. So you can actually see that accidentally there, just in case you didn't get it the first time. Okay, well, guys, as we're coming towards the end of our hour, I want to rip through some of these questions because you guys have been asking some awesome questions here. Ashley's been doing a great job in responding to some of them. So I will throw these out to you guys quickly. You can give me quick little answers because we've got maybe 25 or so questions. Randy was asking about when do turtles hatch on Ostinal Beach? And Ashley's already responded between July and December in Ostinal. So if you want to come down. We addressed Amishi. I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that right, Amishi. How scary is zip lining? I guess it really depends, right, on the individual and how comfortable the guys make you feel, but it is very, very safe. So if you didn't want to do a big cable, maybe do a smaller one quickly. We discussed Susie asking about tours for seniors and how we incorporate transport to most of our tours. Let's have a look. We've got here Anastasia. Steve is asking, is this an appropriate venue to ask about tours for small group of adults and friends? I think it's very appropriate, Steve. Yeah. What kind of tours, Anastasia, when we got small groups traveling together, do you generally recommend?
I would say just about anything that we've already discussed. Like if it's a small group, again, it depends on how active they want to be. It depends on their physical limitations, if they have any, if they're real adventure seekers, if they want culture and learning. Yes, like there's something, again, for everyone. And I have found recently, I've had a lot of interest in what I would say are unique experiences in like going to a very private finca that has its own waterfall, and they've got, cattle ranch, and they have a barbecue for you, and like making it a really unique experience just for your group is something that I've been seeing a lot more with these groups and with families or just groups of young adults, trying to set aside that time to do something totally private, or you can get out there with the masses and, do all the other adventure activities as well.
Yeah. Yeah, very good. I think that's a really, really good answer. It depends entirely on the individual, right? There's a lot of flexibility depending on where you are. Totally agree. Excellent. Andrea Irwin, Maite, what kind of footwear do you recommend? We're doing several activities, including zip lining and the waterfall tour. Any other recommendations for what to pack?
Okay, so for footwear, for those tours, I would definitely recommend closed-toe shoes. Either how do you call these? Water shoes,
Water shoes.
or when I did these activities when I was smaller, I would just bring my tennis shoes that I didn't mind getting wet, and they work just as well. But something with, a good sturdy sole, so you're not sliding and slipping through the waterfall, and you're not dropping your shoes while you're ziplining. So yeah, that's important. And then what to pack? We have a great FAQ that includes a packing list, so we can take a look in there. But just like a light jacket, how do you say, fast drying clothes.
Yeah.
Rain jacket in case it rains, flip-flops for relaxing, bathing suit probably. So that type of thing. I can go on for a while, but
yeah, I will share the what to pack video, and of course it depends on what kind of activities you're doing. But closed water shoes are great, especially if you're doing, tours that have involving whitewater rafting, rappelling, zip lining, anything that potentially gets wet. If you are hiking, like you mentioned, light hiking trainers, sneakers are always good as well. Quick dry clothes, different layers. Dry bag, that's a good one.
Dry bag.
Yeah, especially if you're doing whitewater rafting and you want to bring your own camera. Very, very cool. Yeah, we'll share that video so you guys can click on that as well in the chat. Let's have a look here. So Pam J. Jones, Pam, thanks for your question, was asking about the weight limit for ziplining. Again, as Ashley says, this varies somewhat between the operators, somewhere between 230 to 250 pounds. Can be slightly more, Anastasia?
So technically that line can hold a ton of weight, right?
Literally.
So really it's not so much about the weight, it's about the harness. Does the harness fit? So like you've got a 300-pound dude who's 6'5", like he can probably still do the tour. But if I think the maximum waist size is 44 inches, I believe.
I think so.
But it's right around there. That's something else that's really good to, again, be open with your travel agent about. Like, there are certain tours that they do have weight restrictions. Things that if you need a life jacket on, like, will the life jacket fit? Yeah. They need to pull you back up into the raft. Can they pull you back up into the raft? Horseback riding, like, those are things that you would hate to get there and have somebody be turned away. Like, that would be. So again, that's something that you should also.
Very good point. Always get in touch with your travel consultant, plan and go through each tour that you're interested in doing for sure to double check. Very, very good. Let's have a look. So Jean-Luc Deschamps, you have got in touch with us. Thank you, Jean-Luc. You asked, will you cover the best region to stay regarding easily accessible activities? I think we did. Obviously, Arenal is great for families. Loads to do. Again, in some of the principal areas, you'll always find good adventures at different levels. The same in Manuel Antonio and Guanacaste. I definitely see Ashley's responded there as the Arenal being the adventure capital. Maite Amishi says, thank you, Maite. It's been fabulous to work with. So that's lovely to hear. Take a shout out. Andrea is asking, are there any affordable villa options? That's a really open-ended question, Andrea, and we do have a lot of great rental options. We're probably going to do a webinar in the coming months specifically about rentals. They are, again, located all over the country. Again, some of the primary areas around the country, you can find some of the best ones. And they vary awful lot from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 bedrooms, depending on the size of your group, where you want to stay, the level of luxury. So yeah, if you want to get in touch with Anna, Maite, or Ashley directly and you're interested, get in touch and the guys can actually help you out specifically with what you're looking for. Anastasia, Susie was asking here, I will be staying in Finca La Huertas outside Atenas for 2 months. I'll have visitors coming throughout these 2 months, and we prefer transportation to and from the resort in Atenas. Can you help out with that? I mean, that's going to be a tough one, right?
That is going to be tough. So we offer fully customized packages, but they are complete packages. So we do the hotels, the transportation, the tours. There are some areas that we don't have properties, and Atenas is one specifically that we don't have anything there that we work with. So in this case, we probably would not be able to help, but if you'd like to get in touch, we can make some recommendations for you on how to get yourselves there.
Yeah, highly recommended. That's a good point. The packages are kind of combined. You don't necessarily have to add tours. You could add those later, but transportation and hotel is generally what we specialize in helping you guys customize with. Amishi was also asking about bug spray. Do you need to do it at night? It's always safe if you are going out at any time of the year, just to be sure. And then Maite, Amishi was also asking, do you recommend getting US dollars or using the local currency, as I've heard it's more expensive if using credit cards? I like to jump in this because this comes up quite a lot, and this is one of my hill I'm willing to die on, as I did, I think, in the last one. So Amishi, again, super important. So Costa Rica accepts US dollars. And if you're using them, when you change them in any official location, you will get the fair exchange rate in Costa Rican colones. It's always good to have local currency for smaller purchases, but you shouldn't be ever charged with your US debit or credit card, only what the credit card provider charges you. So if you want to come down to Costa Rica with a few smaller bills, Costa Rica is very common, 1, 5, 10, 20. Don't walk around with 50s or 100s. They may not get changed very easily. If you do go to the ATM, take a few colones out in one go. That would be a lot cheaper from your direct checking account than using any exchange service in the airport. They will screw you over. So, or if not, just use your dollars and get your change in colones. But this comes up. And we're in 2024, right? I'm like, come on, guys. No, take your US dollars to Costa Rica, or use your debit card, take a little bit of cash out, or just use your credit cards, right? I don't know if you guys use, Anastasia, do you still use a US bank card?
I do. Yeah. All my banking is still in the US.
Right.
So yeah,
Well,
Amex, just about everywhere except my Amex, Visa everywhere. Yeah. Yeah. Agreed.
Sorry, Maite, I didn't want to steal your thunder, but I'm always strong on that subject.
No worries.
Randy was asking, do we have a similar podcast focusing more on adult senior visitors? Randy, we actually do. We have a Costa Rica. It's called the Travel and Living Podcast. It's on our YouTube channel, Spotify, iTunes. I actually host that, and sometimes we have one of our guest presenters, Jess Lickey, and we actually discuss a lot of different topics about living and traveling here in Costa Rica with a bunch of expats and locals across a different number of sectors. So do check out the Costa Rica Travel and Living Podcast wherever you get your podcast for more adult themes, and we cover a bunch of stuff. We've done about 30 episodes. We try and do at least a couple every month, so hopefully that's helpful. Jean-Luc was also asking, can we have a list of the hotels and travel consultants suggested? Yes, Ashley can get you in touch with that. Actually, we have on our website, you can meet the whole team of the Vacations Costa Rica staff, and you can see all of our travel consultants. Wendy can send it over. Thanks, Wendy. You've also sent right here the direct link on YouTube to the Travel and Living podcast, so I'll post that as well. And let's have a look. We've got a couple more questions here. Jackie is also asking, how do we find or hire a guide through our hotel? Is that something, Anastasia, that's commonly done?
Sure. Yeah. If you're planning your own vacation and you head up to the front desk of your hotel, you can just ask them for a guide. They will work with the certified guide and have those offerings. If it's a really busy time of year, though, they may or may not have availability. So that's something to be aware of, especially with things like national parks and so forth. Like, they only allow certain numbers of people to enter every day. So if you're coming at a peak travel time, I would recommend doing that in advance. Yeah,
very, very good thought. And your lovely client, Maite Amishi, was asking, they're coming to Costa Rica December 18th to the 25th. How long does it take in immigration typically? just to prepare so she has snacks for the kids.
Bring snacks.
Yeah.
Yeah, bring snacks. Normally, immigration is not that bad, but over the last years during high season, it does get busy. I had one friend that was coming back and she took, I think it was an hour and a half going through immigration. That's like worst case scenario, but be prepared for it. Just bring a lot of snacks so everybody's happy. You will have someone that guides you through the immigration. So you'll be covered there. But during those dates, it is a little bit busier. So just expect a little bit of a longer waiting time. Just be armed with patience and excited about the rest of your trip.
Yeah. Very, very good point. Especially at the busy times, especially around midday as well, depending on when your specific flight arrives, at least in San Jose International Airport, it does get pretty busy with multiple arrivals between 11 and 2. So be more prepared for that. Susie was also asking Anastasia, are there any specific vaccinations necessary?
Sorry, I was on mute. So no, there are no vaccinations that are required to come to Costa Rica. Always talk to your healthcare provider, about what they would recommend for you. I know that there are some areas of the country that maybe you want to take those malaria pills. There hasn't been a case in a really long time. It's very unlikely. I've never taken any of those things.
Yeah.
And I've lived here for a very long time. Never had any issues. But if you're going to be like volunteering out somewhere and you're really out in the bush, maybe you want to do that. But generally, you don't need anything else. You don't need, like yellow fever, any of that. None of that is required to come into Costa Rica.
Fantastic. Totally agreed. Same thing.
Unless you're coming, do you need it if you're coming from South America?
Yeah.
If you're coming from the Amazon
They
rainforest,
do require it if you're
you will
coming
need
from.
to have your yellow fever vaccine updated. And that's a 10-year vaccine that you can get. And even if you're coming from a country that touches the edges of the Amazon rainforest, so Brazil, Paraguay, Ecuador, Colombia, Peru, they all have that, and that is a requisite for immigration. So if you are coming from South America, you're traveling through, yellow fever is essential if it's not your country of residence. Yeah, good, very, very good point. Andrea Whaley was also asking, she was here recently in Costa Rica, and Maite, she wanted to know the policy on the etiquette of tipping. We know that taxes are included with the restaurant, so 10% and sometimes 13% stated in the menu. But when it comes to tipping tour guides, drivers, restaurants, what do we recommend?
So yeah, this is up to you. Obviously, we encourage it, and it's gonna be different between guides and everything. I am really bad at this one because I always just have the guide, but usually for the bellboys, it's about $1 per bag. For housekeeping, $2 per day is okay. More is always appreciated. Tour guides around $5 per person. Drivers is $5 per each hour of service. And then for fishing, that's another animal completely. I don't know it, but it's a bigger tipping. I'm not sure about it. You can talk to one of our fishing specialists and then they can let you know how it goes with that. But yeah, that's what we recommend. And then at restaurants, service is usually included in the total check amount. But if you have a great time, as we mentioned, they're very accommodating. They'll help make a puree for your kids. So if they do that, leave a little bit more.
For sure. Well, that was a really good summary. Yeah.
Fishing is 20%
You did great,
the cost of the charter.
Yes, 20% exactly, Anastasia.
20% of the
20%.
cost of the charter.
If that could be half day,
also
full
just
day.
Add on to the at the restaurants, like that 10% that's included in the tab goes like that's split. That doesn't go just to your server. That 10% goes to back of the house, front of the house, other staff. So if you want to leave something specifically for your server on top of it, I always recommend like an extra 10% in cash to make sure that actually goes to your server. Because if you do it on your card, it's going to be split among everybody as well.
Very, very good point. Okay, well, I'm going to, the last question here, Anastasia, I'm going to throw it to you as well, because we've got through quite a lot for this hour. Pam was asking, do you recommend the all-inclusive hotels, or is it easy to find restaurants?
So
Big
it's
question.
easy to find restaurants. It's pretty, I mean, it is pretty easy to find restaurants, but like, again, as a mom, it is really nice to just, you want a smoothie? go get your smoothie. You want second breakfast? Go get some more breakfast. Like, it is really nice to just be able to let them go and get what they want, have that 24-hour room service. You don't have to worry. Like, there are so many dining options if you're going to somewhere like, for instance, the Westin, that's just got a little bit of everything. So I see the benefit to doing both ways. Like, you're not going to necessarily have 5-star meals at an all-inclusive. You're not going to have super local, authentic, Costa Rican food if you stay at an all-inclusive. So it just depends on the kind of experience you want to create for your family. But I see the benefits of going the all-inclusive route.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, hey guys, thank you very much. A lot of love in the chat. I appreciate you guys enjoying this. You found it very informative. A lot of people saying thank you. So Anastasia, Maite, Wendy, thank you for joining us for another Costa Rican Vacation webinar.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No worries. Again, sometime next week. Today's Friday. So we're already getting to the end of the week. We will get this live on our webinar channel, specifically in YouTube, so you can rewatch it. And stay in touch for a very exciting webinar next month in November as Costa Rican Vacations turns 25 leading up to Christmas. We're going to go back through the years, discuss some of our favorite places, what's changed when we started, and where we are now a quarter of a century later. So we'll get some fun characters. Guys, you have been super informative. I hope everybody's had a good time. Don't forget to subscribe and follow along if you're watching on YouTube, our social channels. And if you have any questions, do send Anastasia, Maite, or even Ashley, who's been really busy this afternoon asking a ton of questions. So great job, Ashley. And I look forward to see you guys next month with our next set of panelists. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.
Hasta la próxima. Ciao.